My ex-wife found out about my father passing away and all the money that he left me in my inheritance. You won't believe this. She's coming back now, claiming that I owe her half of the money even though we're divorced and long gone. But now she told her family and they have threatened me, thrown bricks through my window, and it doesn't stop there. They broke into my house at 3 a.m. with a baseball bat. I'm 38 and male and have always been pretty close to my father, which has always driven my wife crazy. Especially since for the past year or so, my dad has been extremely ill. He's been dealing with renal disease and congestive heart failure, and since I'm his only son, I'm the one who's taking care of him. I make sure to drive him to the clinic 3 times a week so he can do his dialysis, which is what is keeping him alive since he doesn't have a match for a kidney. I was tested and I wasn't a match. I begged my closest family to go see if they're a match. However, most of them were reluctant about having one of their kidneys cut out and given to someone else. Mostly because, what if when they're older, they need a new kidney, and they've given away one of theirs when they were younger? That's what could be the difference between them living and dying. Well, I guess I understand where they're coming from, but if it was me that was a match, I would not in no way hesitate to give my father one of mine to save his life. There's a lot of people who donate their kidneys and live just fine with one that they have left. But no matter how hard I tried to convince my close family members, they just refused to go through with it. It was rather frustrating that these people could be the ones who could keep a sick man from dying way too soon by simply donating a good kidney to save his life. But the worst part about it was my wife, Maria. It did not matter how sick my dad was or how close he was to being on his deathbed. She always had something selfish and rude to say about me, just helping my dying father every day. She could not for the life of her figure out why I would put aside my other responsibilities, such as catering to her every need, if that's even such a thing. But if I did not pay attention to her every waking problem or what she had to say, I was in for a rude awakening. If she was not putting me down for not noticing her new hairstyle, or the fact that she rearranged the dining room for the 100th time, every day, when I walked in my front door, she was there leaning against the hallway wall, just waiting to tear me a new one. And not only that, but she was ready to go to war about where I've been and why I had not been here for so long. And of course, my answer was always the same. I was driving my father to the clinic to get his treatments done, and then I drove him back home and helped his nurses get him situated. It's gotten so bad that I don't even feel like I can stop and sit down and just conversate with my father without having to get up and rush to go home to be interrogated. And this afternoon, when I walked into the house, my wife was already in a hell of a mood. As soon as I got through the door and hung up my jacket, she was instantly by my side asking me why we don't have a new car or new upcoming business plan to obtain more wealth and be people who are important. What you may not realize is that my father is a very wealthy man, and no, I have never asked for a dime from him since I was old enough to work on my own and take care of myself. This means yes, I've struggled greatly and still do to this day, but what my wife doesn't know, well, at least not yet anyways, that I took out a pretty substantial loan just to help us get by with the house payment, property taxes, insurance, and utilities. I haven't told her because I know she will weasel her way into getting a hold of as much of the money from the loan as possible and blow it on everything and anything to make herself look like she has money even though she's broke. When I came in the door and went into the kitchen to sit down and go through bills, Maria followed behind me, and before I knew it, she slammed a piece of paper down in front of me and said, "So when are you going to tell me you've taken out a huge loan that I could be used for something else? Something I need? Or were you just going to hide it from me until it was already gone?" She looked at me and then rolled her eyes as she sat down in the chair next to me. "Well, What do you have to say?" She said, clearly angry at me for keeping this money from her. So I took a deep breath, and then I told her that I did not tell her about the loan because I specifically got the loan to pay for overdue bills that we've been behind on for the past 5 months. So I said these words. "Let me ask you this. Do you enjoy living in a house like this?" Well, she was about to protest, but I stopped her and kept going. No. What about the car you drive? Or the water that you bathe in? Or how about the electricity? Yeah, up in your house at nighttime. Oh, what about all the other expensive crap you think you have to, well, I don't know, survive? I stood up and walked into the other room, and she of course came stomping after me, yelling that since we were married, half of the money was hers. And I had to inform her that she was not there when I signed for the loan, so technically the loan is in my name, not hers. So I said to her, "Well, that and you have no means of paying a single penny back against this loan. What on earth makes you think I would give you a single dime of it so you can just waste it on absolutely nothing? I would like to be able to keep my home and my car, and I need to be able to take off work for a while to help take care of my father. He's been placed in hospice care this week because every time they put him through dialysis, his heart rate decreases, and his doctors aren't sure how much longer he's going to be able to handle the treatments. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to be very busy doing what a man who loves his father does. A man who needs to have a home to come back to once everything's said and done, Maria." Well, Maria rolls her eyes at me and told me that I'm simply wasting my time worrying about that old man. She told me that he was so wealthy yet he could not even support his broke son who can barely make ends meet. I told her that if she did not like it, she can find a new man to mooch off of and boss around because I've had it with her condescending attitude towards me taking care of my dad. Well, she stopped complaining for a minute and then her demeanor changed all of a sudden. She walked up to me and rubbed her hand across my shoulders and whispered, "You know, you could always ask your father to help you while you're struggling. He's almost dead anyways. What else could he possibly do with all that money he saved? He can't take it with him when he dies." Wow. I was stunned by her selfish, money-hungry, gold-digging way of thinking, and I walked past her into our bedroom and grabbed her prized possessions, which happened to be a pair of suitcases from one of those top designers. I honestly don't even know the name or how to pronounce it. But I laid them out on the bed, and I ushered my wife into the bedroom. I pointed at this suitcase, and I asked her which one she was going to place her favorite dresses in, and which one was going to hold, her excuses for collections of bells that she collected from all over the world with her somewhat rich family. She said to think about what I was suggesting before it finally sunk in. "You're kicking me out?" She squeaks so loud the next-door neighbor's dog starts barking. I told her I was done with her attitude and her bossy way of trying to control every single aspect of my life. I told her she would not get much in the divorce, but she could expect to hear from my lawyer within a few weeks. But until then, she needs to start packing. Maria called her family, who all showed up at my house, where they were all starting going through everything in my home. It didn't matter if it was clearly not Maria's, they were going through everything. They tore apart my home from top to bottom. By the time all of Maria's stuff was packed and placed in the moving truck, Maria's father, Carlos, found me in the kitchen trying to put all my dishes and pots and pans into the cabinet. Carlos cornered me in the front of the sink, and the lazy Susan, he got so close to me that I could smell the garlic on his breath from the Italian food they ordered while at my home to pack up Maria's belongings. Carlos stared me in the eyes for a good 35 seconds before he told me that I was making a horrible mistake. He told me that his family did not believe in divorce and that what I've done to his daughter was unforgivable. I tried to explain to him that his daughter did not value family the way I did, and I asked Carlos if he was sick and dying. Wouldn't he expect his only child, If only had one offspring to help take care of him in his time of need." Carlos paused and thought about exactly what I just said. He clicked his tongue and told me that he would expect his daughter to help him, not his son. Because women were put here to help with medical situations, not men. Well, I wasn't surprised by his answer because after all, they were a Latin family and they do things much differently than my Caucasian family would. I told him I was sick of his daughter always making me feel like I was doing something terrible by helping my sick and dying father in his last days. I could not sit by and continue to let her treat me like a criminal for doing what was right in the first place. Carlos leaned in close to me and whispered in my ear, "We will never forget what you have done to our sweet Maria. You will remember this family." Well, I pulled away from him and told him to get out of my house. After they left, I went back to my normal routine of picking up my father and taking him to the clinic for dialysis and treatment. And afterward, I would take him home and spend as much time with him as possible. This whole time, my two children have been in the background witnessing their mother treat me horrendously and question me for taking care of my sick dad. I had to keep explaining to them that their mother does not value the time that's spent with loved ones, especially if it could not benefit her in some sort of way. And no, this is not the first time I've had to explain to my children why their mother acts the way she acts. She's learned some pretty unruly behavior from her entire family over the course of her life growing up, and I was not aware of this side of her until after we had already had two children and been married. It was like once she knew she had been trapped, she could finally be who she really is and force me to either live with it or move on to live on my own life, without her overwhelming selfish tendencies. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. So today's story is that of a drama for sure. There's 4 updates to hop into. If you guys are not subscribed to the channel, take a second right now. If you want more daily videos, smash that subscribe button so you never miss an upload. It really helps support me and I appreciate it. Here is update number 1. It's been a week since I filed for divorce against my wife and she has adamantly refused to sign the paperwork. However, I was able to trick her into signing the paperwork by promising her that I would pay alimony. What she doesn't know is that alimony won't be very much, but it got the job done. And of course, after about 2 months of her getting payment, she realized that she was getting practically nothing. But that's the least of my worries. My father has been placed in hospice recently, and it's not looking good. I just got done visiting him, and I've been praying nonstop that he'll pull through, but I know he's probably not going to make it. I decided to go to bed early that night, and in the middle of the night around 3 a.m., I received a phone call. It was from the overnight doctor that usually checks on my father. He called to tell me that my dad passed away in his sleep. I was devastated. I was not with him when he passed away. He was all alone, and that breaks my heart. I could not even come close to falling back to sleep that night, and the next morning when I got up, there was a knock at my door. I put my robe on and reluctantly answered it. It was a man in a really nice suit with a briefcase in his hand. I asked him what he needed, and he told me he was my father's lawyer and a good friend of his, and that he was here to help me with my father's funeral and discuss my father's will. I let him in. We sat down at the kitchen table and he laid out some paperwork for me to sign. I asked him if my father had put anyone else in his will, and his lawyer told me that I was the only beneficiary and that everything that my father owned is now mine, which included his vast wealth. I was taken back by this information. I mean, I knew that my father was rich and I was his only son, but I had not even considered that I would be the only person to inherit the money. But when I really thought about it, no one else in the family ever visits him the whole time he was sick, so it made perfect sense that he would leave it all to me. So, I went from being in a large amount of debt to a millionaire in as little as 6 hours. I immediately thought about my ex-wife and what she would do if she found out about this, but I just ignored my gut feelings and signed the paperwork and the lawyer left. I knew I had to start planning my father's funeral, but I could even start looking for a funeral home. There was another knock at my door. When I looked through the front window and saw my ex-wife standing there, my stomach sank. How could she possibly already know about everything? It just happened. Wow. I sighed and opened the door, and she pushed her way inside and got straight to business. She went and sat on the sofa and crossed her legs and her arms over her chest, and I looked at her and said, "So, what do I owe this pleasure of seeing you so early in the morning?" She rolls her eyes and says, "I know your father just passed away, and I know you inherited all of his money. Half of the money belongs to me. And you're going to give it to me or you're going to regret ever meeting me." I couldn't even help it. I busted out laughing at the ludicrous statement she just made. I told her she's out of her mind if she thinks that she's getting a single dime of the money I just inherited. I told her that I did not have that money when we divorced, so she has absolutely no right to any of it. Her face turned red, and I thought she was going to start melting. She stood up and rushed towards me, and I put my hands up and said, "Don't even think about putting your hands on me, Maria." She took a step back and told me this would not be the last time I hear about this, and I knew exactly what that meant. Her family was going to be harassing me until I gave in to her demands, and that was not going to happen. I told her she needed to get the hell out of my house, and with that she left. But before she left, she asked me if she could talk to the kids, and I told her that they were sleeping and they don't know about the grandfather passing away yet. I was not going to let her be the one to tell them, and then she hit me with this. "I'm taking you to court to get custody of both of them. You don't deserve to be their legal guardian, you jerk." I snorted so hard I almost bust a blood vessel in my nose. I told her how to plan on taking care of them then. You have no money to even afford a place on your own. Here, they have their own rooms. I have all the money in the world to take care of them. So go ahead and try, Maria. You're just going to lose and look like a fool. Update number 2. Well, it's been a month since Maria showed up at my home, and I was able to lay my father to rest in one of the best cemeteries in town. And yesterday I went out to the cemetery to place new flowers on his grave, but when I got there, his tombstone had been completely obliterated. Chunks of stone were laying all over his resting place, and the ground was black. I bent down and read what it said, and I was shocked by what I read. The money belongs to her until you give what's rightfully hers. Expect to keep having to buy new tombstones for your father's grave. Sincerely, the family. I kicked the plaque so hard, it burst into 1,000 little pieces. How could anyone desecrate someone's grave like this? I made sure I called the police and reported foul play. They told me they'd keep an eye on the cemetery at night to see if they can catch them in the act, and I immediately went and ordered the new tombstone to replace the broken one. I was furious, yet not surprised. Maria's family was absolutely insane. They always have been, and I knew this was not going to be the only run-in with them that I would have. I cleaned up the tombstone the best I could, and then contacted the right people to have it replaced. I messaged my ex-wife Maria and told her she's really immature, desecrating a man's grave who just passed away over money that did not even belong to her. And of course she played dumb like she didn't know what I was talking about, even though the note clearly indicated that the reason the tombstone was ruined was that I had not given Maria half of the money. And there's no way in hell that I was going to give in and give it to her. No. I don't care what they do to me or my dad's grave. He would never forgive me if I gave in to her demands and gave her his hard-earned money? I tried to put it out of my mind and relax once I got home. I planned on ordering a pizza from that night and watching a movie with my children, but my son decided he was going to go with the races of a couple of his friends and daughter and asked me if she could spend the night at her friend Jessica's. Well, of course, I gave in and let them both go on have some fun. There's no reason in making them sit around with me and sulk over the day's events, and boy was I glad I had let them leave for the night, because the next thing I know, a brick of some kind came flying through my living room window. And before I could get up to investigate, there was another brick thrown through the window on the side of the house, which is just what I needed, since the next plan I had was to rent out my house and move the kids and myself into my father's place. So I ran outside to try to catch a glimpse of who was vandalizing my home. No surprise, it was Maria's brother, Javier, 39. I could clearly see his long black hair flowing through the wind as he sprinted away my house and got into what was clearly his black Kia. I shook my head in disbelief. You'd think that they would try a bit harder at concealing themselves if they're going to actually commit crimes. I walked back inside, picked up one of the bricks, and, well, on the back of one of them was a piece of paper that was taped to it that said, "The money or else." I rolled my eyes and tossed it on the patio, picked up the phone and called the police and made a report about the incident. An officer stopped by and took a look at the damages and the bricks, especially the one with the message. And, of course, I had to explain to him about my ex-wife and her family being obsessed with me giving her half of my inheritance, and the fact that they're doing things to imitate me into giving her the money. I told the officer that this probably won't be the last time I have to call the police because of them. And of course, I was right about that. Update number 3. Hey guys, I apologize for leaving the update in the middle, but here's another one for you. So, ever since the brick throwing episode, I've since fixed the broken windows and began moving everything into my father's house. The kids are pretty excited about moving into their grandpa's house, mainly because the bedrooms are huge and they'll both have their own bedroom. Soon, I'll have new tenants living in our old house that I'm going to be renting to. Maria and her family have no clue that we're moving, and I'd like to keep it that way, but obviously my luck they will find out somehow and continue to make me miserable. And of course, just by saying such things I jinxed myself, because after we got everything moved into my dad's house, I ended up getting an unwanted visitor at around 3 a.m. in the morning. I happened to wake up in the middle of the night and was so thirsty, so I went downstairs to get a drink of water. The kids were sound asleep upstairs, thank God, and when I walked into the kitchen, there was a man standing in the doorway with a baseball bat. And before I could realize what I was seeing, he was charging at me and hit me in the side, which knocked the air clean out of me. I stumbled to the side and looked up at the moonlight coming into the windows in the kitchen, and was just enough to light and illuminate the perpetrator's face. I recognized him immediately. It was Maria's older brother, Jerome. Before he could take another swing, I ducked and charged him, ramming him into the cabinets and knocking down all sorts of canned goods onto the floor. All I could think about was the kids waking up and coming downstairs. I hurried up and put Jerome in a headlock and told him I would put him to sleep if he did not take his baseball bat and get the hell out of here. I told him if he ever comes back, I'd make sure he couldn't walk again. And with that, I let him go and shoved him out the back door before closing and locking it behind him. I had to catch my breath for a minute after being knocked on the side by a bat. I had not really thought about one of them breaking into my house in the middle of the night to attack me, but I guess I should be ready for just about anything at this point. I phoned the same police officer I dealt with about the brick, and he came out and took my statement. He told me to make sure I put some security cameras in case something like this ever happened again. I told him he was lucky my kids did not wake up and come downstairs, because I probably would have done a whole lot more damage than I would have wanted to. Because no one messes with my kids. I don't care who it is. The police officer took my statement and then left, and once again I had a hard time falling asleep last night. What's funny is what happened next, because Maria's brother knew we had moved to my dad's new house, but Maria was nothing but clueless. Update number 4. I guess I'll start where I left off. Maria had no clue that we moved out of my house to my dad's house, and she ended up showing up at my old house where I now have new tenants living. She knocked on the door, and the wife of the man I rented the house to answered. My ex-wife starts freaking out about why I wasn't there and if she was my new girlfriend or something. The man's wife had to explain to her that they were tenants and that I moved away, but Maria would not listen. She told the woman she was a ducking liar and I was inside the house somewhere and that I need to come out now. Maria even went as far as to slap the woman when she told her that I was not there and that she needs to leave. Maria told her that if I was not there, then she needs to know where I am and figure out where the hell I moved to. But since Maria slapped this woman, she all but herself kept herself from attacking her back. Instead, she slammed the door in Maria's face and called the authorities, who came and arrested Maria for battery and trespassing. I wasn't at all surprised when I heard what Maria had done. She has been a gold digger her whole life for as long as I've ever known her. If it's not about money, then it's about what she can get from somebody else. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it's of value, and the fact that she'll go as far as attack an innocent woman for no reason at all tells me I made the right choice in divorcing her when I did. I don't know what I ever saw inside of her. Well, love truly is blind, and her brother Jerome is getting a few years in jail too for breaking into my house and attacking me with a baseball bat. Her family has got to learn something from all this, but chances are they'll keep operating the same way they always have. If it benefits them, then they will do anything and everything to make sure they get whatever they can, no matter what it takes to get a hold of it, even if it means spending time behind bars. Which quite frankly suits them really well if you ask me. And I can promise you this. That woman will never see a dime of my money, not even when I'm long gone and dead. I don't care what the plan is that she came up with next, it'll never get her the riches that she so desperately thinks that she deserves. But she will never be capable of having it. Okay, I'll be honest with you guys, I did not see this ending any other way than the entire family basically going to jail. I mean, Jerome, he broke in with a baseball bat, the other brother threw a brick through the window, and the father threatened them numerous times. What in the world? How unstable of a family. Guys, let me know your thoughts about this story. Maybe someone out there has been in a similar domestic type relationship and you want to share a few details about it. What would you do if you were in OP's position? Drop your comments down below. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe for daily videos if you want to see more content. I'll see you guys in the next one. And remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!